Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I finally saw the rest of Green Book. I saw the start of this film years ago, really liked it, but for some reason I didn't see the rest of it, and I've been looking for it ever since. I found it on one of our commercial channel streaming services, 7 Plus, and I watched it, and it was really good. I'm glad I saw the rest of it. It lived up to the expectations I had from the opening. The film stars Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali as Tony Lip and Dr. Don Shirley. Dr. Don is a concert pianist who's doing a tour of the Deep South, and Tony Lip is his bodyguard slash driver that's been hired for 2 months to drive him around. And of course they have to use the Green Book because back in the day black people couldn't just travel safely. They had to know where they could go, what places would allow them to come in and would serve them and all this sort of stuff. It's disturbing to realise it was such a reality that you could literally print a book about it. But that's just the reality of racism back then, which of course we're going back to thanks to Trump, so we'll probably all learn about it in a few years because we'll probably all be back. But it's something that just seems unfathomable now, but that was just everyday life back then. Okay, so the thing about this film is you have these two totally different characters who could be very unlikable, and they really do a wonderful job of portraying them as really likable, complicated, interesting people. You see why they are who they are, and they're very likable, and it's quite an achievement, I think. And you see a bunch of scenarios. There's a bit of back and forth between them. There's a lot of what appears to be judgment from Shirley because he thinks Tony's unrefined, and he's like, you can do better. Like, I don't think he thinks he's better than him, but he knows he can do better. He's always pushing him and challenging him, and he feels a bit judged, so there's some tension here and there. And there's a bunch of incidents. First incident is, he tries to buy a suit and they won't let him in. They get pulled over for no reason, and the cop is saying, why are you driving this C word around? And when he works out he's Italian, he's like, oh, so you're half anyway, so of course you're driving him, and he punches him out. And he tries to act like it was for Shirley, and no, you did that because he offended you. And he's like, we need to keep our dignity. It's the only thing that can win. And we can't resort to violence. You never win. And they get out of jail because, of course, when he hit that cop, I'm like, oh, God, he's going to get them both in so much trouble. But fortunately, Shirley knows Bobby Kennedy. He calls him up. And, of course, the police start to scramble when the Attorney General calls up and says, yeah, get him out now. So they get out, but he's outraged at Tony that he had to call in that favour because he lost control for being insulted, which is something he deals with every day. So they have a bit of backwards and forwards about stuff like that. Like there's a scene where he's playing black music on the radio, and Shirley's like, "Who's this?" And he's like, "Little Richard." Just he names black performers, and he's like, "You don't know your people." And he's like, don't judge me and assume things about me because of my race. He's like, you do that with me all the time. So they have that little debate, which is interesting. There's a scene where he goes to a bar, he goes out on his own, and he gets beat up by a bunch of guys. The other guys from the band, there's 2 other guys, it's a trio, and they're also travelling with them. And they basically call him and say, Don's in trouble, get down here. And these guys are wanting to really beat him up. And he fakes having a gun and gets him to back down, and the owner of the bar pulls out his gun and turns it on the racist, and Don gets to go. And he's a bit freaked out that he's got a gun, but then he says he doesn't have a gun. So he just was holding his hand behind his back like he had one. And then later on, there's another little scene where he slaps the guy in the face really hard. He basically practically punches him because he doesn't have the Steinway set up, and he's disrespecting Don. And this is all sorted out, and Don didn't even know what happened. But then the last sort of instance was they go to this last concert, and the people won't let him eat at the restaurant along with the audience that are eating dinner before they have the concert. And they all see that he's not being allowed in and that, and he decides to walk and cancel the concert. And then the guy's freaking out because he's got 400 people who've paid, and he doesn't want to lose the money, but he's basically being a racist. And Tony shoves him into a wall, which breaks the plaster behind him. He pushes him that hard, and he stops him and he says, no, if you want me to stay and do the concert, I will. he's like, no, we're leaving. So they go, they find a black bar, and everyone looks at him walking in his suit, and they challenge him to play some music, and he plays a piece of his classical / popular music. He does like a blend and his own sort of unique sort of style. They love it. He shows he can do something else, and then he's happy to play their music, and everyone gets down, everyone has a great time. Some people see him flashing money at the bar. They wait outside. Tony can smell it a mile away. He takes his gun out, fires one shot, they scatter, and he's like, I knew you had a gun. And then the ending of the film is really sweet. Basically, they're trying to get home in time for Christmas after the last show, because Tony has this big family that are all having this dinner. And the whole time, I forgot to mention, he's been writing to his wife. His wife said, write to me, because it's 2 months they're going to be away. And Don's like looking at his writing, going, Jesus, this guy is, he's barely literate. And his stories are like, yeah, today I like washed my socks and did this sort of thing. I miss you sort of thing, but and he starts telling him, write this, and they're collaborating on these letters. And eventually he says, look, I can do it. And he says, what did you write? And then he writes something really nice. He's like, okay, you've got it. So he lets him write his letters from then on. And so they're not going to make it, and Tony's exhausted, and he's like, look, we just try. And then the next thing you see, Don's driving and Tony's in the back asleep. And I'm like, they get him there, he wakes him up, and he's like, go to your family. And he's like, oh, why don't you come in? He's like, no. And then he drives off. I'm like, is that how it ends? They just never see each other again like that? Because you could tell it was a genuine offer and he would have been welcome. Then he goes in, he sees his family, it's all great. Because the wife's been reading out his letters, and her friends have all been swooning over these letters and everything. And then Don goes home to his, fancy apartment over like a theatre, and he's just got his servant there and he's alone. And he takes a jade rock that he took to remember Tony by, because Tony, he saw it on the ground at this stall where people were selling jewels and things, and he picked it up because he thought, it's free, it's on the ground. And Don made him take it back, and he went back and he slammed it down, and he actually kept it, and he put it next to his wife's photo as a good luck charm, a lucky rock. And at some point, Don realised this, and he took it to keep it to remember him by, and it's really sweet. I'm like, damn, I want them to like see each other again or something, or be friends after this. And then you go back to the party, and someone knocks on the door. I'm like, yes, he's gone to the party, and it's some other people who showed up late. I'm like, damn. And then he goes to close the door, and it's Don, and he comes in, and everyone is like, hey, this is my friend Don, and everyone's like, okay, he's friends with Tony, okay, he's black, but we can do this. And everyone's nice, it's all fine. Then the wife comes up to him and gives him the biggest hug, and she says in his ear, thank you for helping me with his letters. So she knew the whole time, but she also knew that he was writing them, and he did, and he just helped him learn how to express himself. But she knew he did it, and he has this big smile on his face. And then the film ends right there, and I'm like, that was such a great film. They did such a good job of showing these two totally different people who could have been very unlikable, and showing the racism of America in a really interesting but disturbing way. And the thing that bothers me is I have heard since that some people when they were talking about Emilia Perez, they were also talking about this film, implying it has issues of how it represented the subject. Now, I cannot see anything wrong with this film. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to have to do a bit of research, but some of these people just like to make up things to get upset by, honestly. So maybe the film did nothing wrong. Maybe they just changed a few things for the film, which they often do with historical films, biopics and stuff like that. But we'll see. I didn't see anything disrespectful in there, anything I had any issues with. There may be some historical accuracies, but I don't know. But the two guys end up being friends after that. They were friends until they died like a few months apart in 2013. Tony went on to be a maitre d' at some big club, and he got to meet all these different performers. They showed him pictures of people. And Don, of course, went on performing, and he sold records for the 50s and 60s and kept performing. And it's just really nice to see these two totally different people understand each other, learn from each other, become friends and stay friends. And this is a really beautiful film. And I'm not surprised that Mahershala Ali won the Oscar. He was great in it. And I'm just surprised that he's the guy who was supposed to play Blade, and apparently it's not happening. And he also won, did I say this, or was this in the long video? He also won a supporting Oscar for Moonlight. He played the father figure of the main character. I thought the main character won the Oscar. It was actually him in a supporting role who won the Oscar. So he's now a 2-time Oscar winner, which John Campea always makes fun of whenever he brings up Mahershala Ali and Blade, and I'm like, why are they making fun of him saying that? I mean, I'd be proud of it. I'd be saying it too. But okay, I did it in 10 minutes. I was really wanting to do a 5-minute review, but it's just too much to talk about. I really loved the film. There should be more movies like this. It was a small film. It cost 20 or 30 million. It made like 230 million. It was a really big film. And it was a really good film. And I don't know why people are criticising it, but I'm going to go Google that and find that out now. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Green Book. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would. It's a really, really great film. Don't listen to the critics. Maybe maybe listen to them afterwards. Enjoy the film first.